So I think I should start this video with some clarification. First of all, the distinction of world's largest airline doesn't apply to one specific carrier. In fact, multiple airlines around the globe can be considered world's largest based on various metrics. For example, Turkish Airlines is the world's largest by number of countries served. Southwest is the largest by number of routes served. American is the largest when it comes to capacity, flight volume, and passengers carried, and Delta is the world's largest by revenue, brand value, and fleet size. But today, we're going to focus on one specific metric, and that is the number of passenger destinations served, which is not the same thing as number of routes. The airline leading in this category as of October 2024 is United Airlines, with 371 destinations across all 6 inhabited continents, and even more on the way next year. So in this video, we're going to discuss some specific reasons why United was able to grow so rapidly, and also dive into some exciting new destinations coming for the airline in 2025. So let's actually do this in the opposite order. First, we're going to cover United's recent new route announcement that, for a US airline, was definitely out of the ordinary, but stuff like this is pretty normal for United because, as we've seen, especially coming out of the pandemic, they love to experiment with new international routes. This announcement was made back on October 10th and encompasses United's largest international expansion in its history. Next summer, the carrier will add service to 8 new cities and also fly its largest transatlantic schedule ever, with 760 weekly flights to over 40 destinations. Of the 8 new cities in this announcement, 6 are transatlantic routes, with 5 being served from United's Newark hub and 1 from Washington Dulles. The first route to launch will actually be Tokyo Narita to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia on May 1st, running thrice weekly for the summer season with the Boeing 737-800. I have a lot to say about all of these routes, by the way, but we'll get into that after the full rundown. Next up is Newark to Faro, Portugal on May 16th, running 4 times a week for the summer, and like most of United's flights to smaller European cities, this service will use the Boeing 757-200. The next route begins on May 21st, and it's Newark to Palermo, Italy, running 3 times a week for the summer on the Boeing 767-400. 2 days later, we jump over to Washington Dulles, where United will launch thrice weekly, year-round service to Dakar, Senegal, with the Boeing 767-300. Then on May 31st, it's back to Newark with thrice weekly summer seasonal service to Bilbao, Spain, on the 757-200. This next pair of routes will launch 1 week after the other, Newark to Madeira Island, Portugal on June 7th with the 737 MAX 8, running thrice weekly for the summer, and then on June 14th it's Newark to Nuuk in Greenland, running twice weekly for the summer, also with the MAX 8. The final new route from this announcement will launch on July 11th from Tokyo Narita to Kaohsiung, Taiwan, running daily year-round with the 737-800. Wow, so there's a lot to go over here. We're going to talk about the Asian routes in a little bit, but first let's talk about Europe. With these new routes, United will serve 5 cities in Portugal, which is the most of any US airline. They are also now the only US carrier serving the cities of Porto, Ponta Delgada, Madeira, and Faro. Now, Madeira and Faro historically have been more popular among Europeans, and that's the bulk of the traffic that these airports see. So seeing United launch service to these 2 cities is really interesting, especially Madeira. Not only is it the home of Cristiano Ronaldo, but that airport is infamous for being one of the most challenging airports to land at. Part of the runway is literally built on stilts, and it's ranked as both the 9th most dangerous airport in the world and 3rd most dangerous in Europe. Now, that's not meant to scare anyone, as pilots receive additional training before being cleared to fly here, so something similar will surely follow for the United pilots. Now, Newark to Palermo is really cool, primarily because Palermo is on the Italian island of Sicily, a place that has seen a massive surge in travel demand from the US. The history of service between the New York area and Sicily is also pretty interesting because at one point, Meridiana Airlines used to fly 767-300s from JFK to Palermo in addition to Naples. Meridiana doesn't exist anymore, but Italian leisure carrier Neos continues to serve Palermo seasonally from JFK with 787-9s. Now, going back to US travel demand to Sicily, it's so popular now that a few months earlier, actually, Delta announced its own new service to the island starting May 2025, but instead of Palermo, they're flying to Catania on the southeast side of the island using 767-300s. Next up, Bilbao, Spain will also be interesting because United will be the only airline offering transatlantic service from that airport. And because Bilbao is a smaller airport, it makes sense why they're using 757-200s, which is a plane known for stellar performance out of smaller airports. Now, Bilbao surely has a decent amount of local attractions, but speaking primarily from my lack of knowledge, I really don't know how well this service will do. I feel like this route might end up with a similar fate to United's service from Newark to Bergen, Norway, which also used a 757-200, but was eventually cut after not performing well in the summer of 2022. Of course, we're going to briefly talk about Newark to Nuuk in Greenland. This will be the first ever nonstop revenue link between the US and Greenland. Nuuk's airport recently received a massive overhaul and will also be getting a runway expansion. This will allow Air Greenland to shift operations completely from Kangerlussuaq to Nuuk, which is the capital of Greenland. United is not the only new carrier serving Nuuk next year, as Scandinavian Airlines will be launching seasonal service from Copenhagen. Okay, and then there's Washington to Dakar, Senegal. Dakar is the only city in this announcement that's served by another US carrier, that being Delta from JFK. I was surprised to hear that this route will use the 767-300 because when I first heard the news, I for some reason assumed it was on the 787-8, like the routes from Washington Dulles to Accra, Ghana, and Lagos, Nigeria. There is a massive Senegalese population in the DC area, and that's actually why Air Senegal briefly tried serving Baltimore with the A330neo a few years ago. So United's using the 767-300, but these will actually be those high-density 767s with over 200 seats, as opposed to the premium-heavy high-J 767s you see flying to London and Zurich, for example. And that's because Dakar is not a big premium gateway, it's mainly a VFR or visiting friends and relatives market, so the 767s used on this route will reflect that. But this is great, I'm really happy to see United growing its African route network. In fact, in late October, they launched brand new service from Newark to Marrakesh, Morocco with 767-300s, becoming the first US airline to launch service to that country. American briefly considered service from Philadelphia to Casablanca, but this service never materialized. Now, this next segment of the video is going to focus heavily on United's operation in Tokyo, Narita. This is going to be reactivated as United's sort of de facto hub in the Asia-Pacific region, which the airline bought from Pan Am in 1986. Now, those who know United would be aware that the carrier has maintained a long-time Pacific hub out of Guam, a US territory in Micronesia. However, the Guam hub has reportedly not been as profitable as was expected, and that could be very well due to its location. As such, United is moving a lot of its Guam-based 737s and crews over to Tokyo. Now, that's not to say that United is leaving Guam completely, of course not, it's too important. After all, Guam is one of the endpoints of the famous Island Hopper service to Honolulu and also sees the following routes. I assume that United's going to keep all of the Micronesia routes along with nonstop services to Honolulu, Manila, and Narita. I'm not too sure about Haneda, Nagoya, or Osaka, but there have been no announcements made about United ending any of those routes as of now. Okay, sorry, huge tangent there about Guam, but back to Tokyo Narita. That airport has largely declined in popularity in recent history, especially after Haneda Airport opened a few decades ago. Delta Airlines, for example, inherited the Narita hub from Northwest, but gradually scaled down its operations there, and as of a few years ago, abandoned Narita completely in favor of Haneda. Delta no longer has an official hub in Tokyo, instead opting for Seoul Incheon, South Korea, thanks to its Trans-Pacific joint venture with SkyTeam partner Korean Air. But United still has a lot of slots in Narita and a large operation from both Narita and Haneda airports. Not only this, but both airports are major hubs for its Star Alliance partner All Nippon Airways, or ANA, enabling easy connectivity to each other's flights. Both airlines are going to be able to reciprocally feed each other's flights in and out of Narita, and this definitely makes more sense when you consider that none of the new routes that United is launching from Narita are served by either ANA or Japan Airlines. United rebuilding its base in Narita will be an easy, low-risk investment because it already has so many existing resources and not much to really lose. As Patrick Quayle, its Senior Vice President of Network Planning and Alliances, puts it, "Our job is solving problems and being creative and not complaining. We have these assets that are out in the Western Pacific, so let's use it to try something different. United just launched a new route from Narita to Cebu in the Philippines with 737-800s. This is essentially an unofficial test for how well routes like this could perform, but apparently the bookings are quite strong, so that's a good sign. The next route launching from Narita will actually be in April 2025 to Koror in Palau, supplementing the existing service from Palau to Guam. After Narita to Palau comes Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia in May, and then Kaohsiung, Taiwan in July, all on 737-800s. So first of all, Mongolia. Wow, that was not something I expected at all, especially from a US airline. Now, Mongolia is gradually increasing in popularity as one of the top countries to visit in Asia, so starting this new summer seasonal route offers an easier way for Americans to get there. Previously, the only carriers offering one-stop itineraries from the US to Mongolia were, and still are, Air China, Asiana, Korean Air, and Turkish Airlines. Now, with United, you could literally fly them or ANA from any United hub in the US to Tokyo Narita and easily connect onto the flight to Mongolia. The next city is Kaohsiung, Taiwan. Now, United and Delta both serve Taipei, and there is no shortage of flights between Taipei and the States. Kaohsiung is the third largest city in Taiwan, but despite having flights to both Tokyo airports, neither ANA nor Japan Airlines serve it. This means that when United enters the market, it has a competitive advantage over basically everyone else because it will have the largest network out of all of the airlines serving Kaohsiung. The only other airline that comes close to United in that regard is Cathay Pacific, who have multiple daily flights to Hong Kong and then multiple connecting opportunities from there to the US and Canada, among others. And before I close off, of course, I have to give an honorable mention to the other new routes that United is starting next summer, some of which are also to new cities altogether. On February 15th, they're launching weekly flights between Newark and Dominica in the Caribbean on 737-700s. That's especially historic as it'll be the first time in Dominica's history where it'll have a non-stop service to the New York area, and the 737-700 will be the largest aircraft serving that island. On April 5th, United Express will become the first and only airline serving Puerto Escondido, Mexico, with weekly year-round flights from Houston on the Embraer 175, bringing it to 23 destinations in Mexico alone. On May 22nd, United is adding the following routes: San Francisco to San Jose, Costa Rica on the 737 MAX 8, and Dulles to Venice, Italy on the 767-300. 2 days later, they'll also add Dulles to Nice, France on the 763 as well. So maybe you've noticed a trend throughout this video. United consistently leads the way when it comes to international expansion, hence their slogan, connecting people, uniting the world. They're always experimenting with new routes, but that's of course after they first consult the data to support launching them in the first place. And this is more or less the reason behind why United is now the world's largest airline, not just by number of passenger destinations, but also by available seat miles. It's all about United leveraging its strengths, having strategic hubs from which it can create connectivity and give its customers more options to go basically anywhere. And that makes sense when you consider that United operates 40 nonstop routes that are not served by any other US airline. Now, I know that I've been making a lot of United related content lately, but that just happens to be a coincidence. United doesn't sponsor me, nor do they give me any special treatment, though that would be pretty cool. Covering route announcements like this is something that I've been doing on and off on this channel for many years now, and United just always happens to make an appearance in that regard. So this was a fairly long video, but I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you have any news topic suggestions, feel free to leave those in the comments below and I will take them into consideration. But until next time, thank you so much for watching today. Take care everybody, and I will see you next time.